Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Horse's Mouth Live, the Extraordinary Advisor Show. My name is Ellen Rogan, and as always, I have guests to help you in every area of your life, especially your business. And I am really excited about our guest and our topic today. We have a return guest, Rob Holman, who I will give his official introduction in a minute, but Rob is one of the kindest, most enthusiastic, highest energy people that I know. I said before we went live, I always feel like I'm so low energy when I'm around Rob because he's in a most beautiful, wonderful way, so enthusiastic, and you'll get a sense of that momentarily. But I was really excited to have Rob back on because the topic we're going to talk about today is about working with the people that work with you, your employees. How do you keep them engaged? How do you not only recruit the right people, but keep them there? I've been working with a lot of advisors who are trying to recruit people for their team. They're growing. We talk a lot about how to do that, but it's also important you want to keep them there. And how do you make your team, whether it's a big team or one or two other people, really effective to serve everyone, your clients, yourself, of course, them. And that's what Rob and I are going to talk about today. So let me give you his official bio. Rob Holman is the CEO of a global consultancy firm, Holman International. He's the best-selling author of 2 and soon to be 3. It's the launch of his newest book today, Move the Needle, and I'm certain it'll be a bestseller because it's a fabulous, fabulous book. And his 2 other books are Lead the Way and All In. And Move the Needle, when I talked to Rob a few weeks ago, like such great information here, so important for all of us in whether you're leading a small team, a big team, or also actually leading your clients. And he is so wonderful at helping leaders really grow meaning in their lives and in their businesses. And I just love his philosophy. So welcome, Rob. I don't want to take any more time with the official introduction. I want people to just experience your awesomeness. So thank you for being here. And thank you for being here on launch date with Move the Needle. I'm so honored. Yay.
I'm honored as well. Listen, I've been on your show before. I've gotten to know you not just as a working professional, Ellen, but I've got a chance to get to know you as a human being. And I am loving what I'm experiencing, just your heart for people, your heart to serve people, your heart to help. And so I'm looking forward to a wonderful conversation. And I'm sure it's going to be passionate and it's going to be purpose driven. But isn't that awesome when it tends to be that way?
So Rob, you have all this enthusiasm, as I said, and you are so focused on the humanity in people. Like, what is an illustration? Like, what compelled you to believe in people so much?
Yeah. I go back to a time, this is years ago. So I was dating, who's now my wife, Karen, of over 17 years. So we were dating. This is going to date us, mind you. And we were watching a movie on a Friday night. And I get this call. Now, this is a great movie we were watching, by the way, too. So we're locked in, we're hanging out together, everything's great. And then I get this call, and it happens to be a really alarming call. This young man's on the other end of the line, and clearly he's under the wrong kind of influence. His voice is shaky, he's slurring his speech. He's, clearly, whether it be drugs, alcohol, I knew something wasn't right and right with him. And he says these words right out of his mouth. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He says, "Rob, I want to kill myself." Hold on a second. Now, what you might need to know, and your audience might need to know, is just 2 weeks prior to this phone call, I was at a church service that I was a part of a group that would counsel people and pray for people after the teaching. And this young man of approximately 18 years old comes up to me, and he started to share some really deep aspects of his life, areas of struggle, areas of, he was depressed. He had clinical depression. He was turning to drugs and alcohol. The music was becoming a little too loud, so we went into a back room just so I could really hone in on him a little bit more and really listen to understand. And in that moment of being present with him, I just really felt a need in the depth of who I was to remind him that his life matters, that he's unique and he's significant apart from everyone else on the planet. And then I shared with him these words before we left. I said, if you ever reach a low point in your life, here's my phone number. Call me at any time. He was the one that called that Friday night. And when he called, Ellen, I got everything out of him that I possibly could. What's your address? I'll be right over. I mean, the guy wanted to kill himself. He didn't want to live anymore. And so I drive over to his house. Long story short, his mom is at the front door, frantic. I mean, running around. Rob, will you help? Will you help? She goes, my son is in the back of the house on the kitchen floor, laying face down. He was passed out. And it was that time where I ran to the back of the house. And all I knew is I wanted this young man to be well. I wanted him to live. I wanted him to live a vibrant life. And so what did I do? I felt like I was his dad at that particular time. I barely knew him. I rubbed his back and I cared for him for over about 40 minutes. And I'll tell you, I go back out to meet with his mom because he wasn't getting up off the ground. He was breathing and his vitals were okay. And all of a sudden, unbeknownst to both of us, his mom and myself, a few minutes later, he comes walking back to the front of the house with a renewed sense of purpose. It was completely miraculous. And it showed me in that time and in that moment that when we love ourselves and we love others within our sphere of influence deeply, and we're committed to love them and to learn about them and to be a cheerleader in their life, the best miracles in life come out of that place. So I wanted to share that with you. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's an unbelievable story. And I think from hearing that, it seems to lead into this idea of how do we work with not only our clients, but our team to really have that shared human experience. And I think this word experience is being used a lot, the experience economy and how do you give people a great experience that come into your office. But why is employee experience not enough, in your opinion?
Yeah, wonderful question. Employee experience is a wonderful thing. It's not wonderful enough. I think that oftentimes it's built into that. And I think specifically in and now coming out of COVID, at least we hope, right, Ellen? At least we hope we're coming out of COVID, is people have coined it the employee experience. For instance, here's what they mean by that in many different regards. Okay, we're going to give our workers and team members more autonomy, more flexibility. We're going to increase vacation time, possibly some financial incentives. All these things with the hope that it's going to build up and motivate the employee, the team member, so they'll perform better. Sounds noble, sounds admirable. Quite frankly, I think it's better than nothing. It works, at least it works to some degree. But I think we can build something even greater, deeper, more significant. It's in addition to those things, why not try to reach into the heart of the worker, the team member themselves, find out what makes them come alive, find out what inspires them, find out what passion areas are in their life, and then serve them in that inside place in their heart and their mind and kind of fan the flame, so to speak, of life and positivity. And I've found when you reach someone more from the inside, now they're going to be compelled to act. They're not going to do things because they ought or they should or they're paid to do it or they even feel like they should. They're doing it from the deepest places of who they are. And there's no pure place than that when you can actually reach people and help them even become more alive by understanding how they're wired, what makes them tick, what makes them come alive, and then spend time with them, encouraging them, serving them in that area or in those areas. Watch out and watch and see what happens.
So, Rob, I can imagine there's advisors listening to this that say, oh, yeah, that sounds good, but I don't have time for that. I've got clients I'm supposed to be having a deeper relationship with, or they're going to go to a robo-advisor. I have compliance stuff that I'm dealing with. I have, it's enough to recruit someone and train someone. So what are ways, is this something that just takes tons of time, or what are ways or suggestions that advisors can actually do that and feel authentic versus oh, I heard I'm supposed to care about your well-being going forward and what's really important to you. How is this happening in an authentic way that also doesn't take all of your time and isn't actually being manipulative, oh, I'm supposed to do this, so you'll work harder for me?
Yeah, no, it's great question. So I think practically speaking, if advisors take a look at their calendar, where you spend your time is very telling of where your heart is. Now think about that. So we may need to take a closer look at our calendar. Activity doesn't always equate to the best activity. In other words, if we want to be as efficient as we possibly can, we need to learn what it means to be effective. I want people to understand and grasp that for a moment. I'm going to let that sink in. So are we truly being effective? Do we know our priorities? Do we know the people and the things that matter most to us in this specific season of our company, for instance? Okay. So take a look at your calendar. Do you like the activity that you see? Are you reaping reward from the activity that you have? Or are we just doing it because people say to do it and I should always do it? We want to truly work smarter, not harder. I'm not saying don't work hard. I'm a big proponent of working hard, but I'm even a larger proponent of working smarter and not harder. So when we hone in on our calendar and we really say, okay, where do I really want to devote most of my time to where I really believe I'm going to reap the most benefit? My clients ultimately will reap the most benefits as well. So that's sobering for a lot of people taking a look at their calendar, because again, where our time is spent says a lot about our heart. Now, to answer your question, Ellen, as it relates to, is it manipulative? You know, in the midst of when you really are trying to reach the heart of the person. So let's say we take a look at our calendar. Let's get real practical. Take a look at our calendar. We need to reprioritize some things. Maybe we're spending a little bit too much time on things, procedures, policies, processes, and not as much time with our people. Now, our people could look like our team members. They could be our clients. Now, all of a sudden, we're reprioritizing. All right, what would it look like for me to spend more time with my clients or with my team members? And then how should that time be best utilized? Now, I'll make an argument that time should be best utilized connecting with them as human beings more so than working professionals or clients. The temptation for all of us is to keep it on the professional level. We might dibble and dabble a little bit in the personal, but then we're like, I don't want to cross the line. And so we'll back way up and keep it professional. The end of the day, when we treat people as human beings first, and we share stories, we ask them questions to be invited into their story and vice versa. Now there's an exchange of humanity that would never, ever be there otherwise. So you're talking about working smarter than harder. It's a willingness, a commitment, and intentionality to spend time with the people that matter most. And in doing so, shed of some other things that we just need to shed of. Okay, it doesn't mean they're not important at all. It just means people are the priority over the things. And then how are we going to spend time when we spend time with the individuals? And I'm going to really emphasize is to say, hey, make sure every time you get together with your client, every time you get together with a team member, that you're getting to know them more as a human being, asking them questions surrounding what makes them come alive. What are they most passionate about? Can you share a story with me that I've never heard of before? And when you connect with them on that level, business just happens. Business just comes about. You can bridge it from the personal into the business, but I'm telling you, it's out of a whole different place, more from the inside. It's working itself out.
Yeah, I want to share a comment. I was talking with an advisor that I'm doing some consulting with yesterday, and he is trying to recruit kind of a technical person for his firm. And I asked him, well, this is someone who's going to be leaving another firm because you want someone with experience. Like when you're interviewing people, what is the reason that they would be looking to leave? And he said this shocked him, but over and over, they're kind of working with a jerk. Like it's a human reason that they're leaving. It's not about the money where people think like, oh, if I just made 20% more, once in a while it is if someone's underpaid. But it's really about like, how do you treat people here? And, this concept that you said before, procedures over people, the way he had written his job description was really about procedures and not people. I'm like, you got to add your awesome personality in here. Like, this sounds like an awful place to work from your description. And I know it's not. He's had a long-term employee there. He's a really good human. So I think there is so much focus on procedures. Some of it you have to have for compliance, but I love the switch from only focusing on procedures to really adding in a big amount of people in there.
Yeah.
So, in terms of like moving the needle in recruiting and retention, because that is, the idea of, yes, there's lots of advisors out there trying to recruit team right now, but it's just like with clients, you don't want to get clients and then have them leave. You also need to make sure they stay. Like, what are some things for people to think about?
Yeah. So backing up to like an interview process, this is so valuable, right? Because you want to pick the right person. I mean, think of how much time, if you pick the person that's just not a good fit, how much time, how much money, how much frustration and discouragement it causes for months, some people years. So if we can catch it on the front end, Ellen, I think it is going to be, I mean, it's huge. So some things to consider. One is on the front end, as you are asking questions during the interview, okay? What we tend to do is, are they a right cultural fit and are they competent for the task and job at hand, right? Those are the two areas we like to think. But how about like getting to know them? Again, this gets back to my earlier point, getting to know them as a human being. For instance, as opposed to rushing into, corporate or organizational values, because a lot of companies, they hang their hat on that. And that's important, don't get me wrong. But how about asking questions to the person you're interviewing that speaks to their personal core values? Now that's big, because if one of their top personal core values is commitment, oh, you have yourself a real loyal person here. And that's important to know. Does that fit, or is that in alignment with the corporate values, the team members that you have? So if we start asking more personal questions, I'm not saying every interview process should turn into like a full-fledged counseling session. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I am trying to say is, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to enter into some personal space there to get a feel for who they are as a human being, and if they're a really good team member fit, cultural fit. And the only way we're truly going to tell that is if we get to know them as a person. Then when we start getting the right people in the right seats of the bus and we're all heading in the right direction, now we want to keep these people for the long haul, right? And so that gets into our earlier conversation as far as spending time with people on a one-to-one basis. That's why I love one-to-one meetings with your team members, certainly with your clients. There's nothing like the one-to-ones, but it's how we utilize that time of the one-to-ones that matter. Again, so many people, they will walk, if not run into those meetings with what you want to accomplish business-wise. Here's the problems and how are we going to solve them? We'll get there. Whoa. We'll get there. But first, when you can enter into that personal space, like, Ellen, I'm going to ask you a question. Like, if someone were to, in all seriousness, not in a weird way, but you meet someone for the first time and they just take a sincere interest in you as a human being, not as much of a working professional, what emotions do you have there? How do you feel? How does it make you feel?
Important, or that if they're good at it, can make me feel better about myself than before I started the conversation. The old Dale Carnegie thing. I think it could make me feel just happier, more important, because they're focusing on me. I mean, I think it's good. I can think of conversations I've had with people where we've talked about them the whole time, and at the end, like, I literally maybe talk 5% of the time. They're like, this was an amazing conversation. So connected with them. Yeah.
So think of all those words. You feel, I'm going to use even some of my own words: valued, appreciated, connected, present, respected, honored. Who doesn't like to feel that? So if we can take that into the working environment, even in the interview process, I think it's really going to help a leader or a team really sift through who's a good fit, who's a better fit, who's not as much. And then when you do get the right people on board based on who they are as human beings, now you don't want to leave that alone and just do that once or twice a year. Now remain committed to that. The same thing you did in the interview process, getting together with them on a one-to-one basis within group team dynamics as well, to spend time getting to know one another, honoring each other, sharing stories. Now all of a sudden, you talking about being inspired, you talking about having creative ideas, you talking about landing more clients, it's going to come in and out of that deep, deep place.
That example I gave where people are leaving jobs because they're working for jerks, I can imagine how, instead of saying like, oh, I'm a nice person to work for, you're evidencing it by asking questions like that. But so what are good questions to ask that wouldn't be weird? Like that, too personal that you can't actually ask people, but would be open-ended, or what are some suggested interview questions to get at that personal side of things?
What are some things that have happened in your life, some perhaps good, some very difficult or challenging, that have helped shape you to become the person you are today?
Oh,
See,
I
in
just
other
got the
words,
chills from
yeah,
that.
see,
That's an
see, see
amazing
that?
question, because they feel like they get to talk and you're going to hear your values, as you said earlier, how important that is to make sure there's an alignment. They're going to have the feeling of, oh, this person's like a beautiful human. No one's ever asked me that in a work setting before.
Right. And it's a safer way to enter into conversation as opposed to, um, can you tell me your upbringing, like were your parents ever divorced? Oh, well, I don't think this is the place I'm working for, but it's a way that you can do it with tact. You can do it with honor, being very respectful, and enter into this personal space, because then we're having that individual really think thoughtfully about their life, reflect. And I have found more times than not, Ellen, that when I ask someone that, and that's oftentimes how I start conversations with people just in general. It could be a neighbor I'm getting to know for the first time. It could be a colleague in business, a business partner. And it tells me a lot about who they are and who they want to be. And for me, I'm like, is this a person I want to get in the trenches with? And so I don't think it's being manipulative. I think if your heart's in the right place, that you sincerely do want to get to know people and what makes them tick and what makes them come alive. I think there's a genuineness to the process, and I see it really benefiting all involved. The person being interviewed, that potentially could be working for you, and the interviewer, seeing if it's a good fit.
What do you recommend in this? I don't know if we're in post-COVID time. I don't think so. Maybe coming out of it's adjusting. Our son just got called back to the office in a city he doesn't actually live in. So it's a big deal for him to get called in. He's never been in the physical place of where his job is. But there's, in terms of working with team in this, I don't know if it's hybrid now or all in or not in, it probably varies. Like, what are some things that we can think about in terms of best working with the people that we're working with?
Yeah. So a realization that everyone's grieving. People are still grieving COVID and changes with COVID. And the interesting thing about the grieving process, I am no official or formal counselor, Ellen, but I'm a student of people. And just through my own experience with people throughout the years, that young man who I shared earlier, as well as so many others throughout, it's told me one thing, that people are often, if not always, grieving something. So whether it's a lost opportunity, a dream that never came to fruition, a financial advisor that lost the client deal, it was a prospective client and they lost it. The temptation for most of us is to just keep going, and put on this, like, I'm going to be all right, and just keep trucking. The reality of it is we're all grieving. Some physical loss, friendships, moves, transitions. So I think just the mere understanding with your team members or even with your clients that everyone's grieving. Even take a reflective look at yourself, at perhaps some ways that you have grieved in the last 12 months, ways that you're grieving today. I think it's going to help you have more empathy towards the client, prospective client, a team member as you're growing your advisory business, whatever the case may be. When we begin to serve and to lead out of a place of empathy, it's a game changer. It's just a game changer. Like we just talked a few minutes ago, Ellen, like when someone actually asks you about yourself and you feeling validated and feel good about a human, valued and respected and honored and all that. When you begin to understand how someone's feeling, it takes it to a whole other level. So I've found what a great opportunity it is right now when we're still in these COVID times, hopefully coming out, as I'm saying that again, to really try to understand your team members, understand your immediate sphere of influence. And you could do that by asking just some simple questions. I'd asked one earlier. You could ask and say, hey, during these times that I'm sure aren't easy for you, they haven't been as easy for me as well. what's one challenge area that I can keep you in mind about, that I can come in your corner, come alongside of you to help perhaps even be a solution for that problem for you, to just serve you in that way? Is there anything there in your life right now? And I've found just by asking that explicit question once in a while, it lets people know you care. And when people know they're cared for, now it's like, I got your back, you got mine. Let's climb the mountain together. And there's nothing like it.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought up this idea of empathy. It is so incredibly important. You know, a lot of the guests that we have on and the work that I do with advisors is around creating really deep connections, and how that's so much more important than it ever was, probably always important. But the industry is changing that if you don't have those deep connections, you're not going to have a business. And there's studies, Google did a study called Project Aristotle, where they found that what creates the most effective teams. They did this study across all their divisions, and it took 2 years to do it. And they didn't know if it was going to be a mix of technical with not technical, all these different things. They found the number one top thing that created the most effective teams was psychological safety. And one of the ways you create that is through empathy. And so it's for any of you out there that I tend to be more technical or like, oh, that's too touchy-feely. If you don't do this, not only will you lose team, but you're going to eventually lose clients. And it's just such a beautiful human skill. I do want to add to this that when someone's sharing things with you, you don't always have to have an answer. And often it's better if you don't. So you don't have to fix their problem. As Rob was saying, just to be asked and listened to and know if there's something you could do is enough. And I think, sometimes as advisors, you're jumping in with solutions when you don't need to, and that's not even the best thing to be offering. So, okay, Rob, one last, in the little bit of time we have left, what is one last point you just want to make sure people hear and know? And I know there's many more that you want to share, but we'll have you back on to do that. So like one last gem.
I would say this, Ellen, and you need to know, total joy being with you. I am thoroughly enjoying this conversation, as I always do. So thank you so much. I would say, to come full circle and really take a look at your calendar, whatever you can do to create space for people, create it. In other words, view your team members. You might only have one team member. You might have a full-fledged team of 10 or 15 people. View your team member and team members as your most valuable client. Think about that. Create space. Shed of things you ought not do. And begin now. You can go deeper and more vertical in relationship as opposed to horizontal. Now with this depth of relationship that you've etched into your schedule, you have time. There's an opportunity for that exchange of humanity. And as Ellen said, and I've said, like when there's that exchange of humanity, there's no better feeling like it. And there's not going to be any greater productivity to come from it. So have at it, but create space for people.
Love this. Love it so much. And it's such a joy to be with you. Just being in your presence, Rob, raises my energy, and I'm sure it will for people watching and listening to this. Thank you. So where do we send people to get your book, How to Off the Press, Move the Needle? Where should they go?
Does it just sound good, Ellen? Hot off the press, it just sounds good. I would say you can go to a couple different places. One is the book website, which is movetheneedlebook.com. And so that has all the information, the trailer in the book, lays out the book, et cetera. If after this interview or during this interview, you are so excited, you're like, I don't want to go to the book website, I just want to order it, Amazon's your best bet. Just Move the Needle by Rob Holman. You'll find it, order it. And I'd love to hear from you on ways that it's encouraged you, inspired you, and even helped you practically moving forward. So thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Go out there and get the Move the Needle book. It's Rob with 2 B's, Holman. And Rob also does a lot of speaking. I didn't mention this. He's a phenomenal speaker. He speaks all, certainly across the country, maybe beyond that. So check him out at his website. And Rob, thank you. So much of a joy to spend time with you.
Oh, thank you so much too. And you are a total gift, Ellen. I appreciate just the way that you serve, you model, demonstrate so well for me and so many other people all over the place. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all listening and watching. So grateful to have you here. Again, my name is Ellen Rogan. You can find out more about me at ellenrogan.com. And if you would like to download my free special report on what extraordinary advisors know that others don't, you can go to ellenrogan.com/horse's mouth. And so the question to ponder today is, how are you going to make time in your schedule for important people in your life? Remember, be great and create great every single day.